Okay. Kimbo, na tatanzambi yamazulu. Kimfumu kyakuisa, Nzambi mawesha, Nzambi yaku benisha, Bayete tatanzambi mpungu tilendo, bawo. First and foremost, bawo di kolele for any zoners against thee. I pray, Father, that this time would be a memorable time for our people, that more and more people would listen to this message. And I thank this brother uh, for coming on. And I thank you, Father, for this time to do this. Tanzania, we honor you. We honor Kuswa Congo, the Mwan Velela, all of the Maliki Congo, all of our ancestors at this time. Father, we thank you. Nakombo yo Yahweh ben Yahweh. Ingeta, hallelujah. All right, brother. I want to say welcome. It's a pleasure. I know I've listened to you. We've interacted on other platforms. It was actually kind of astounding when you popped up on Moss's feed. I was like, who's this bro? Who is this guy? But it was amazing to see. It's my brother Abi, a man who worked in many famous realms himself, said, it's all about, you don't know who's listening to you. And so you're one of the people that jumped out and was listening, and now you're doing it. So my biggest question for you, what was the triggering moment that allowed you to accept the Bantu truth? How did that come about?
Well, all praises to the Most High and the way CME to all the Bena Congos, Bena Zambis. And thank you, brother, for having me on your platform. I've also, watched you in your videos as well. But yes, the acceptance, like it's a greof question. The acceptance of the Bantu truth, which is just the truth, really. But we're still, as our people are still waking up, we still have to kind of use these caveats because they have no idea what you're talking about if you just say the truth. But don't, in time we'll get there. Honestly, it was, I was never really in Christianity, but I followed a lot of the Christian doctrines, which were essentially just do whatever you want, and as long as God knows your heart, you're good, right? That's kind of what I was always following. And then, when this pandemic hit, it really kind of stopped. I was very, very busy. I was doing many things, different projects that were going on. I'm, writing a book and doing all these different things. And then I started, like, in my spirit, like I've always been connected to the Most High, but I've never really listened to the Most High. So one day I came across kind of like this YouTube video. It said something like Jesus isn't real, something like that. And I was like really offended by the title of this YouTube video. So I didn't watch it, but then my spirit was like, just take a look at it. And then it was essentially talking about, Revelations 1:14, Deuteronomy 28, and, Daniel 7:9, or, 10:6, so you're now like, your mind is blown. And then, like I always say, you kind of go from that awakening, which is like the religious awakening, and then you like awaken into the Hebrew Israelite awakening, into whatever that then becomes, which I always say I was kind of just stopping through. I never bought a house and bought land and pitched my tent in the camps of, the Hebrew Israelite thing. But what happened was I've always been a big person that loved to learn. And so even when I was reading the scriptures and listening to people that were in this awakening, I was like, I think there's more to this. Like, there feels like there's more. It feels like there's more. And then one day I was listening to somebody and they kept talking about Bantu, everything's Bantu. I was like, okay, dude, like, we get it, Bantu, and then that led me to, I think I saw Yaya Masa's, this was like a year and a half ago or whatever, and I don't even know what he was talking. He was talking about something about like water, and he's doing something with water, and I was like, what is this dude talking about or whatever? But it like really piqued the interest, because I was like, but in his spirit, I was like, this king really believes like what he's saying. And so then it kind of like, as I kind of like sat back, I was like, I don't know, this just seems a little bit too much for me. And then like, as you kind of keep going, then you're like, wait, then you go to like, Brother Jonathan's, thing, and he's talking about things. And then I come across your channel and I heard y'all talking about things and educating, and everyone has a different way that they bring the education. And then one day it just kind of overwhelms you to the place where you're like, oh, like this actually makes sense. Like now it all is like really piecing together. So it really kind of just came as like the more acceptance that you knew that there was always more. And in this, the Bantu truth and the Bantu awakening, there's so much to learn, right? Like, because it's not just predicated on what you can read in the scriptures, what you can get from the scriptures. It forces you to have a connection, with your ancestors, with your culture, to the land, and when you're in different doctrines of religion, it doesn't force you to do that. It just forces you to know as many scriptures as you can, wear your fringes, keep the commandments, and then you're essentially done. So that was pretty much how I kind of came in to accepting it. And then I really just embraced it. It was very scary for me for a while because I thought I was going to hell if I, started embracing, and saying names like Tatanzambi, these like very scary things, that they make you seem, but then the Most High, it started to feel very comfortable, and here I am.
Right. And see, that's amazing because for all the people that we talk about, there are those, that they just kind of, okay, well, that's whatever. And then there are others that come in and say, wait a minute, like I know a sister that was started listening to me. She's like, she made a comment to me. She says, you sound like the old man that would sit under the mango tree from way back when, that would talk about these things that people would say they were crazy. And what was fascinating for me was as I came into this awakening, it was kind of like what you were saying. The Most High comes to me with a song that I remembered from way back when. And I was like, the minute it connected to me about the song about going back to Africa to teach people how to praise the Most High. And the part that says they already knew, for some reason, hit me like a brick. It's like, wait a minute, we already knew the Most High, and then when I was going to an evangelical church at the time, I could just tell this pastor wasn't resonating in the spirit anymore. He just wasn't connecting with me. And I did a fast. And when I did a fast, I had never done a fast before.
Okay.
And because, when I was raised Methodist, there's something that they just didn't do. My mom and dad, my mom was a Moravian. She kind of knew some things, but she would never, I don't know if it was for our own protection. She just would never say anything. She always believed that the Messiah was black. She was raised, he was black, which kind of gives me some insight as to why certain things were happening to me growing up. And what really triggered me was when one day, I went to my parents were celebrating their 50th anniversary, and they were honeymooning. They had honeymooned on the island of Curacao. Okay. So they wanted me to we were going to do a renewal of vows. And I guess they said, well, anybody could do it. So they couldn't get the minister. So they asked me to do it. It was kind of funny how that happened. But we went to the island of Curacao in the trip, and the lady, my sister had arranged it to where we were doing a tour. Okay. So we went on the tour, and I was like, for some reason, this is all starting to make sense. And then, so the Most High put it on me to ask the question, are we the real Jews? Are we? Because, there it was like you could see the separation of the slave traders, the Jewish cemetery, the Catholic cemetery, all that stuff. Yeah. And she says, yeah, we're the real people, but we don't talk about it out loud. And I was just like, whoa, I was just kind of like, my eyes really just kind of like blew open, like, wait a minute. So all this stuff I've been hearing is true. Wow. And excuse me. So I went to Tatanzambi, I started noticing some things, and there was a guy that I used to know on Twitter. And apparently he was pretty awoke, but they considered him to be pretty dangerous. Okay. And what was funny was he was telling me some stuff, and I was like, wow, Africa, the ships in Africa. And so for me, people, of course, people thought I was crazy at the beginning.
Right.
But then I
Right.
would start because my dad and my mom are from the Caribbean. I would start telling him some things. He said, what you're saying is true. I'm just not there yet. And
Mm,
the problem is that I noticed that, especially when I'm talking to, there's those in the older generation that know but were afraid.
right.
And then there were those who were aware of certain things, but they just figured that our belief is nothing wrong with it. So,
Mhm.
I'm not gonna get out of it.
If it's not broke, don't fix it.
Right. And so one of the things that really got my attention was talking. I started getting into the Bantu awakening through listening through for some reason the most High said play that's go look up Oshe Baba, and there was a
Mm,
song that popped up that had a Caribbean beat to it, and I just like, whoa, wait a minute. It was like,
mhm, mhm,
I started listening to
mhm.
Bantu songs, and then I heard the brother Ingeta, and then I learned about Pastor Mello. And
Yep.
the thing that got me was, as a brother, now he does the Tokoist youth. He and I
Okay.
first connected when I learned about the Tokoists.
Mm,
And what was interesting was he sent me a lot of the documentation that Masa put in his book, Mayamona.
mm.
And I started to learn about this guy. And I was like, wait a second, what? you know?
Right.
And and
Right.
and and
Right.
when I started to hear about the Child of Revelations 12, I said, I always wondered who that was, but it was like
Mhm.
they were tap dancing around the
Right.
the, the story.
Right.
And then as I started to listen to what we did, I was like, wow, so we must really be the people. And
Right.
so
Right.
the saddest part about it is, as I started to get into the language, I'm still,
Mm.
learning. I realized now why they took it away from us.
Right.
Because as I spoke more and more of singing the songs and listening to the language, things would start. It's like I got downloaded. I got
Mm.
flooded
Mhm.
with
Mhm.
knowledge. And I was like,
Mhm.
wait a minute. So when I would say tatanza, I said, so basically what they taught us in slavery was that the
Mhm.
things that we knew that were holy were
Yep.
considered demonic.
Yep.
And I was
Yep.
like, that's what
Yep.
they did. It is like it
Yep.
started to
Yep.
really get my attention. And
Yep.
so,
Yep.
one of the things that, especially here in this time, and this is what I'm hoping for, because we know the time is getting a lot shorter now. How, like I went to Embo, I went to Angola, enjoyed that trip, wanted to stay.
Mm.
Sadly, I have family members, my wife, and how, like when I listened to you and Brother Yakubi talk, and that was a great interview, by the way. You talked
Thank you.
about when you went, you decided, okay, I'm going over to the land. How
Yeah.
did you how did you do that? What did you do?
You know, it was interesting. I was originally, kind of like what are the same things, you heard about with Brother Yakubi. I was originally gonna go to Ghana, because that's where everyone was going, year of return. And that's kind of what everyone knows is Africa and the diaspora, especially if you're not in any type of awakening, you just think, oh, Ghana. And then I started researching more about Ghana, and I was like, oh, it's cool. See, it looks very beautiful. I was even looking at places there. And it's kind of just matches my personality. I'm very much like either all in or all out. I don't really walk the middle ground. It makes me very unstable. So I like to just make commitments to things. And I just made a commitment once I was like really awakening. Before I had even come into the Bantu truth, I had already made a commitment that I was to leave the West and come to the land. And that was just on my spirit, that as I was awakening, the trappings that I had around me were no longer comfortable and convenient and like sexy and cool and relaxed. Like it now just felt strange and foreign. And yes, you can have nice things, but it was like, this isn't it though. Like this isn't what you're supposed to be aspiring to. And so then I was going to go to Gambia, and I had committed to go to Gambia for like months. I had an attorney there. I got a real estate agent. I made a offer on a house. Had multiple meetings with the owner. And then for whatever reason, I still didn't pull the trigger. And then like one day on my spirit, it was like, just look to see what else is on the continent. And then like just kind of came across Botswana. I had never heard about Botswana literally until like 2 years ago. I had no idea Botswana even existed. And so, you know, I was like looking and I watched a couple of videos and I was like, okay, it's a large landmass, but there's only like 2.5 million people in the whole country. You know, the business language is English. You know, 85% of the people here can read, they're literate, you know. And so I was like, well, maybe this could be a good entry point. And then I started like looking at properties and I was like, oh, properties are like, they're not that expensive in comparison to like places like Ghana. You know, and then as I was kind of waking up more and then realizing, you know, that the Kalahari Desert was where the wilderness that our ancestors were walking on. And then you start seeing all these historical things. And so then I just followed. My spirit was like, just come. And so I told my family, I was like, hey, I'm moving to Africa. Like I literally just one day I was like, hey, I'm going to Africa. And they're like, oh, when are you coming back? I was like, I'm just got a one-way ticket. And they're like, right, but you also have like this and this and this. I was like, yeah, we'll just figure it out. And so I had committed to coming for like 3 months. But in that 3 months, it was a decision of you'll figure out where you're going to be on the continent within that 3 months. And so I came to Botswana as I'm flying in over, you land in Joburg, Johannesburg in South Africa first, and then you take another smaller plane to go into Botswana. And as I'm like looking at the soil and I'm seeing like this copper soil and I'm like, oh yeah, this is home. Like this is it. This is where it's supposed to be. And so I get to my Airbnb, and this is why it's so important that we follow the Mwanda and Simi, because I get to my Airbnb that's a little bit further off than what I know. It's very important for people that are coming from the diaspora to understand geographically that it's not always what you think it is. So you need to really know where places are in comparison to the cities and things of that nature. But anyways, one of the I think it was the 4th day that I was there, maybe the 3rd day, because I slept for like 2 days. I was walking this long path, long path. It takes like maybe 20 minutes, 25 minutes to be able to finally walk to the main road. And this car is driving the opposite direction. And it stops as I'm walking and rolls down the window and says, hey, do you know where such and such dam is? And I was like, I don't know. It's probably that way or whatever. He's like, okay, thank you. He's like, hey, you sound like you're from America. And I was like, yeah, I'm actually from America. He's like, oh, you know, I studied, you know, in Pasadena or something like that. And I was like, oh, really? And he was like, yeah, I studied like film and something. And I was like, well, yeah, I do, you know, I do film stuff in the West. He's like, really? He's like, I did some stuff at USC and this and the third. And I was like, oh, so now we're having this full blown conversation. And then we talk for maybe like a half an hour, 45 minutes. I get his number. He drives off, comes back. And then he was like, hey, you know, if you want to hop in, I'll take you to wherever you're going. Cause I didn't have a car at that time. So we're talking. He's telling me about, yeah, like if you're coming out here to do the arts and this, that, and the third, like, man, it would be so amazing. You know, we've really been waiting for someone to infuse this country and blah, blah, blah. And I have camera equipment. I have all these other things. And I'm sitting there like in a state of disbelief. I was like, how is this happening? So then he's telling me as he's dropping me off, he's like, you know, that the first like oldest remains were found here in the Kalahari Desert. So, and I was like, you know, I heard about that. And then so I'm getting out of the car and he says, you know, so welcome home. So he closes the door. So then from that conversation, I go and I eat at this restaurant. I leave the restaurant and I go to have like a glass of wine at this place called the Eye Towers in downtown. Or I was like, I'll just have a nice little glass of wine, look at everything. And I'm talking to one of the waiters. He's younger. I was like, yeah, I had just gotten here, been here like 3 days. And I'm the only one on this patio, save for a new couple that had just walked in, right? This new couple just walks in and they sit maybe two seats down. And I'm talking, and over the course of me talking to this, you know, this waiter, they hear a conversation I'm hearing. And the guy says, excuse me, I was getting ready to leave. And he says, excuse me, you know, can I talk to you for a second? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, so I heard that you're in the entertainment industry. I was like, yeah, you know, I do this. He's like, oh, I'm actually a producer here, you know, for Botswana television, and we do movies, commercials. He's like, you know, could you sit down? And I was like, sure. So I'm sitting down, talking to him. He's telling me about kind of the entertainment industry that's going on out here, this, that, and the third. So I get his number. Last thing, I leave. I'm like on this weird high where I'm like, how, like this is all in one day. So then I go to this other place that's by the mall, and I'm sitting there. And this lady is like across the way with her friend, and they keep staring at me. So she comes over, she goes, "Hey, are you from Trinidad?" And I was like, "No, I'm not from Trinidad." She's like, "Oh, you know, you look like you're from there." And I was like, "Oh, okay, cool." She's like, "You know, you're from America." I say, "Yeah." So then she goes, "Oh yeah, you know, my friend and I, we're actually teachers. We just come over here. This is our local watering hole." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." She's like, "Yeah, we actually teach at the film school here." And I was like, "You really mean you teach at the film school?" And I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "What film school is it?" She's like, "Oh, this one here." And I was like, "You know, I've actually, that was on my list of places to, you know, contact." She's like, "Oh, well, you got to come and sit down with us at the table." So now I go and sit down, and then like literally we're talking for like 2 hours. Like, "Oh, you got to come and judge the competition." So then literally the next day I'm at the school judging, you know, film school, film stuff that's going on at the school. So I say that story to say that that was like the most high for me. That was like, this is where you're supposed to be. Now, don't worry about, oh, I'm going to leave here in 3 weeks and then go to Kenya and leave and then go here. Just be here. So, you know, I was here. I also met my wife here. All praises to the Most High. You know, and so all of these things, like the Most High really really guided me. So I think, to answer your question, that was like my personal experience, right? Not everyone has that experience, but for me, it really was like, be careful not to try to follow where you feel like everyone is trying to go, because a lot of us, people will say, like, you know, in this Congo awakening, everyone thinks that when we say Congo, that we're actually saying go to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. And we're not saying that Congo means truth. But even our own people are still like, "Oh, I guess we should all just go to Congo." And it's like, no, that's not what we're saying. So I would just say, in your spirit, there's a place, in my personal opinion, there's a place for everyone on the continent. Like, there's a place that you will land and you'll go, "This place is for me." But you have to give yourself an opportunity in time to actually find that place. You know, you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to come for 2 weeks," and then it has to show. It's like, you're still beyond the vacation, the touristy thing. You really get to know a country when you decide, "I want to start a business here," or "I want to live here." So that was something for me that was really important. You know, and I've been here now for a year. You know, I've traveled back and forth from the West. I had to do different projects in the West for like 6 weeks, you know, and then I fly back. You know, but that's how I landed here, you know, and I just allowed the Most High to just guide me however he wanted to guide me. And, you know, all praises, you know, now I'm sitting here talking to a fellow king as well.
Hallelujah. So, you know, I was going to look at your Kana, John 4:14. It's verse 11. I don't know if you will.
Yeah, I'm gonna look right here.
Okay.
John, just John 14.
John 14, verse 11.
Verse 11. Okay. Let's see here. "Believe me that I am in the Father and the Father in me, or else believe me for the very works' sake."
Right. And see, you know, when as you were talking, I pulled that up and I saw, you know, with what you experience, it goes to show you that the Father is he's in his people.
Yeah.
We just lost the communication.
Yeah.
Or we thought we had, or like many of us in the diaspora, we think that we're talking to him when we're really not. You know, one of the things that got my attention about the way that that you've been operating, it's the obedience, you know. And sadly, what I saw happening with many people, they have this mindset, and I kind of tell, even when I said this to my family members, I said, you know, the one thing that really got my attention was, as I learned more and more about what happened with slavery and the things that went down, it's like, how could these people who claim to be Christians do the things that they did? And at the same time, how is it that the God that we serve, what is this? Because the way I got it was, oh, okay, well, we did some bad things, and we were some wicked people, and this was our way. But see, then as I started to grow more wise in the Most High's ways, I said, this doesn't match. It doesn't add up, because then now the world we live in is still jacked up.
Right.
You know,
Right.
there's so many Christians with so many different understandings of the word. Why is it,
Mhm.
and of course the answer is always, oh, it's a fallen world. It's fallen people. And it's
Right.
like, but
Right.
and then when Brother Massa made the comment, but if you have the power, then nothing can remain the same. It has to
That's
change.
right.
And that's what
Right.
made me get into the fact that, okay, something doesn't feel right. And
Yeah.
you know, for me, it goes to show you that as Bantu of Isolele, this is that for those of us who, because I know growing up, I was always like, something, it just doesn't connect. It's not,
Right.
you were
Right.
raised, I was raised by a pretty prominent family. My grandfather was a governor person. He was an administrator in the U.S.
Mm.
government. My mom's sister was a U.S. senator. My
Mm.
mom was a principal. My dad's a CPA, and it's, they have blessings. So you kind of sit there
Right.
and say, well, maybe, I don't know, maybe,
Right.
but see, that what I didn't understand was, though, is my mom is also into sororities. My dad was in the military. Not to say, that sometimes you get drafted, but he went to the Air Force.
Right.
Um,
Right.
he was in fraternities. And then
Right.
I started to learn about the secret society life.
Yep.
It
Yep.
started to make sense that, oh, so what
Yep.
happens is when you do certain things, you get certain privileges.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
I started, well, that makes sense, because I backed away from a lot of the things that they value to keep
Mm.
you in
Mm.
the system. And I was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it was kind of like, well, now it makes sense why
Yep.
things just didn't fit, you know,
Didn't add up.
right. And, a long time ago, back in the 90s, I had a talk with this guy. He was Native American. And he talked about his military career. And his name happened to be Golo, by the way. And I didn't
Mm.
realize at that time that was the Most High's first steps, because Golo means power. And
Mm. Mm.
I was like, this is the Most High's first steps to awakening my senses to exposing Lucifer and the system
Mm-hmm.
that he operated in there, because he was teaching me things, and I was like, wow, and then I had an encounter with another person who was another Native American guy who told me what the CIA used to do about the spirits. And
Yeah.
I was like, say what? Because they were trying to get them to spy on Russia by throwing their spirits. And I said
Mm.
something, and as I started to get into it, um, I saw the movie Amistad.
Yeah.
Boy, that movie triggered me. I was
Mm.
out, and at that time, I was really upset with Tatanzambi, because I was like,
Mm.
how could this happen,
Right.
And
Right.
it was, I don't know what it was, but my mom got a visitation
Mm.
that I needed to get back into the word. So
Mm.
even though I know they say the Most High is not in the Bible, but the Bible is, the Most High is in the Bible, but the Bible is not the Most High. There's still
Right.
some things to learn from it.
Right.
And I started to get these visions for some reason.
Mm.
And the Most High was showing me, you have done something similar to this before, and you have work to do. And I
Yes.
told you, as soon as I got connected to this awakening, it was like all the stuff that I was experiencing, the visions I had as a
Yeah.
teenager, they started to come about.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it just goes to show me, when I first heard, let me tell you this is a trip. And this got me so mad, because I'm like, I don't know how people didn't pay attention. I guess this, because the Freemasons, they're very prominent in my old church, my Methodist church.
Okay.
There's a
Yeah.
lady that came in. At that time, I didn't realize, what they really represented till now. I was like, oh my gosh. So they were putting it in our face. They had this
Right.
lady come in from Israel, okay? And she was
Mm.
doing a study about, she was doing a study about the origins of the people.
Okay.
And she started talking about the predominant race of people there were actually darker skin.
Okay.
And I said, is anybody listening to what this lady's saying?
Right,
Do you all
right,
catch
right.
what this? And it's
Just
like,
going up.
you know, you hear what she's talking about, and it just goes.
Right over your head.
It was a way of them bringing the truth to us, but
Yeah,
not telling me the real truth. It's like when I
right,
found out about what Pope John Paul II said, you know, God is
right,
black and Jesus is an African and French. And I'm like,
right.
you know, for me, you know, our biggest problem in this world is we have a tendency to want to go bury our heads in the sand, or we want to the
Yeah,
ignorant is bliss thing.
yeah,
You know, if I don't
yeah.
really, you know, I know, but I'm gonna just keep doing my thing, you know.
Right,
And for
right,
me,
right.
that was an issue because it's like, well, wait a second, then something is wrong.
Yeah,
Something is
yeah,
really wrong. And see, when I started to
right,
learn about symbolism, like the obelisk and the things that
yeah,
were in the Statue of Liberty and all these different things,
right.
I'm like, that's what, because I always would hear the Jamaicans say Babylon,
Yeah,
that's Rastafari, but I never connected until I finally say,
never connected. Hmm.
oh, this is you know, this is
Right,
mystery Babylon. And
right,
see,
right.
when I learned more about what the Jesuits did, and so when I went to Angola, man, I went to that museum that Massa took us to, and I stood there and I said, you have got to be kidding me.
Mm,
It says it right here, Ethiopia,
mm,
Ethiopia, Occidental.
mm.
And I'm sitting there saying, this is Zephaniah 3 and 9,
Yes,
beyond the rivers of
yes,
Ethiopia.
yes. Yeah,
I'm
beyond
like,
the rivers of Christ, my suppliants will bring mine offerings.
right. And
Yeah.
then they had the whole changing, but when I saw they were bowing down to the Mwini Congo in the picture, I said, they tricked us.
What have we been doing? We've been so greatly, you know, and what you were saying, it brought up like in the book of Sirach, book of Ecclesiasticus 11:21, it says, marvel not at the works of the sinners, right? But trust in Tatanzambi and abide in your labor, for it's an easy thing for Tatanzambi to suddenly make a poor man rich. And that's something that I think our people really that's what we're consumed with right now, right? We're so consumed when you're talking about so many of these things, when it's like how, even now, it's like how we've had so much access to information, right? You have the internet that you can decide what you want to do with the internet. But our people still are deciding to opt into distractions, to opt into, oh, well, I need to just make more money. I need to be more like this celebrity or this athlete or this rapper. And so they're marveling at all of the wealth. And that is still the great sorcery that the daughter of Babylon has been able to cast on our people. And the other thing that you were talking about, even talking about the language, also brings me to the Willie Lynch letters, where he was talking about the counselors that he had that then said that you have to make sure you cut their language off because their language is the way that they communicate. And that you have to be very careful about the brain, because if you don't cut them off completely, the brain has what they call a very interesting way of wanting to reset itself. If it just has an opportunity where it can just tap into something from the past. And all of a sudden, if it can just tap into one little thing, I think he called it something like a miraculous, something like this miraculous, he called it phenomenon, that this phenomenon would occur. That Willie Lynch said that there would be a phenomenon that would occur when our people would begin to tap back in. So this is in 1712, right? When they knew if we can just cut them off, if we can just make sure that they don't have the language and then inundate them with all of this sorcery and low frequency vibrational things, they will never be able to tap in. Then through the television and through entertainment, we will never show them. I mean, I have people till this day, when they're thinking about going on vacation, they're like, oh, I want to go to Japan, I want to go to Europe. They don't even think in their mind to go to Africa. They don't even think Africa should even exist, because that's how great. But then when you get here, you're looking around, like you said, you go to the museums, you can look at pictures, and you're like, wait, this is us, and here are these things, and here's Ethiopia, and you're sitting there and going, guys, everything is literally right here. It's right in front of your face. So it really brings me, as you're saying, it's like it frustrates me so much, and it makes me so impassioned, because it's like our people need to stop wanting to be fed the lie. Like, it's like, I say this all the time when I do spaces. It's like, if you want sugar, go eat a donut, right? We've had so much of that in our life where we've been fed. And then the Masonic symbolisms, everybody in your churches that are high up are all Freemasons. That's the way that they get to be able to be that level, right? And it's like, once you realize these things, for me, I remember I started learning about the occult in 2012, and everyone thought that I was crazy. Like, Dan, what is he talking about? He's talking about triangles and this, and like you're saying, Statue of Liberty, and you know how it was given over by Jesuits and this, that, and the third. But I never parlayed it to the truth, right? But it was like the Most High was like just putting me through a training camp so that when I came into all of this, I wouldn't be overwhelmed with like, what is demonic worship and what is this occult and what are these symbolisms like this and all these other things that you see your athletes and your celebrities do that are rituals that bring on spirits, right? That have power. And many of our people are so consumed still with with that sorcery. And I think that is one of our biggest problems that we're having in today, is that it's not that your elders, the yayas, don't know the truth, but they're of the mindset of if it's not broke, don't fix it. But then also, how is it going to benefit me? And this is a very important thing that I think we don't talk about in this Bantu awakening is a lot of people, they go, okay, look, we get it. We're the people of the Bible. We're the people of the promise. Okay, cool. So how does that put food in my stomach? Right? Like, so how does that put any money into my bank account? Because that's how we're programmed. And they knew, the Kadi and Pemba knew that these things were going to happen. And so now I finally got to a point where I was like, look, if you don't think that your salvation, you don't think that your spirit never dying and being able to be equipped, that you're a royalty, that you're made for rulership, that you're to rule above all people on the face of the earth, you don't think that that's beneficial to you, there's just nothing else I can say. And then it makes more sense when the Most High continuously says only the remnant, even in Zephaniah, when you're reading Zephaniah, I think it's like Zephaniah 3 and like 12, where it was like, and then the remnant of Isolele, because you can see it. Even say you talk to a lot of people and they hear it and then they're like, okay, and then they go like a dog back to their vomit, right back to their sin. So I think that is something that we really, is really a big deal for our people, because we're so into celebrity and wealth and trying to be flashy, and we don't feel like learning about who we actually are is actually beneficial to us. So instead we decide to just snuggle up next to the oppressor, and then hopefully that he will one day shake some of his wealth onto us, and then therefore we will now have our blessings. And we have everything still in reverse, still into this day.
Right. Hallelujah. That's a great thing, because, and that's why, you know, when we talk about, and this is one of the questions I know I talked about, that the hesitancy, okay, of our people, because what you just said was, you know, and I'm glad that the Most High brought you, because, you know, at one point I was going to go into the entertainment business, and I don't know, it was a situation where it didn't happen. I don't know why. The Most High was like, I was going to be a child actor, started, because people said, wow, you have some talent, you could act, I could sing. And they were like trying to maneuver me. And I was like, for some reason, the Most High was like, no, you're going to go this way. It was kind of strange how that played out. And, you know, one of the things I wanted to talk about is, because you've been in that world, how do we get people to see, or how do we get people to see how they've been, the connection? Because, you know, there's a lot of hesitancy about what they're hearing, right, you know, because of what they have set up. So how do we overcome that? How do we overcome that?
It's a great system. They set up a phenomenal system. I give them credit every day. You know, the one thing is, like, when you talk about them, I'm like, you got to give them credit. Like, they're very smart. Like, they've set a very complex system up. You know, I think what's interesting is that, you know, I've been an artist for virtually my entire life. I did mainly theater. growing up, doing a lot of singing, acting, dancing, doing a lot of musical theater. And then I went through a period in 2012 where I was actually the Most High. Oddly enough, I was watching a movie and the Most High was like, there's an idea here for you to write this script. And so I start doing research for this script and I find out, like, wait a second. So there's actually Black people that were in this time and this, that, and the third. And then I'm like, well, if they lied about this thing, what else could they be lying about? And that is the question that you're like, oh, who would have known? That's like the proverbial get ready to jump down the rabbit hole, right? And so like, I remember I'm doing research and I'm like, okay, this, I don't know, like, wait, there is Black people there. And then I'm sitting there going, wait a second. So that means if they lied about this, then I wonder, da, da, da. So then as I'm doing it, and then you're learning about like all of the mechanisms that they're able to use, that they've been using for hundreds of years, even things of like that people still to this day were like, oh, that's crazy, that doesn't exist. Where they're talking about where they put fluoride in the water to dumb you down and to lower your IQ, when they even have Harvard studies that talk about these things. I remember I was talking about this in 2012 and people were like, this is what happens when someone's unemployed. Like that's literally what they were thinking, because I was going through a period of time where I wasn't booking anything, number one, but my spirit wasn't in it. I was like, I just want to study. I was like, every day I'm just studying, hours a day. And so then as the Most High was working, I remember my dad had sat down, we went out to lunch one day and I was like, yeah, Dad, I think I'm gonna stop. I just don't think I'm gonna do the entertainment thing anymore because I just learned so much, right? And I just have seen all the dark things and then we're parlayed it with the places that I've been to. And I said, I just don't want to do this. And I remember he sat there and he looked at me and he said, as long as I have breath in my lungs, I will not let you quit. And he was like, you have something that is so special that you cannot just walk away from it. And when he said it, I was like, I felt it. Like I felt that he was like, would die before he would allow me to stop doing this. And so then I remember understanding that I needed to try to break into the entertainment industry and not try to change it, but to try to be a light. And when I say a light, I don't mean this Messiah. I just mean a different type of artist, if that makes sense. Yeah. And that was very difficult. And, I got lost in it. I got lost into all of the distractions that the entertainment industry allots for you to be distracted in. And the Most High saved me from very many things, all praises. And, one of the things that I would say is that our people, when it comes to entertainment, and especially when it comes to, one of the things for me, I grew up, from a teenager, I was studying like classical music, being an opera singer, this, that, and the third. So I was never crazy into like the rap and hip hop culture. And only when I would get around friends that were my age that I kind of put jazz and classical music away and like got into this culture. But it was like a completely different realm. One wanted me to like stay at home and just chill and relax. And the other one wanted me to be turning up with a whole bunch of women. Like, and it was like, I didn't understand like, how is this pulling me? And then you realize as you're studying frequencies, how they use frequencies to be able to get people in a highly suggestible state. Then they lower the music, they lower the lights, right? And then they have you drinking spirits, right? So then you go into club and we've all been there, if we've been in the world, where you just lose yourself. You wake up the next morning, you're like, what in the world? Like, what did I just do? But you literally were in a trance. And that's what a lot of our people still to this day are in. And I think, this is just from my personal opinion, I think the only way that is going to happen, where we're going to get more of our people that are going to understand how these mechanisms are only when things start to be revealed what these things really are. Because the internet is a vast weapon. But the problem is the internet has now been weaponized so that if you say, oh, did you know that this, and this happened? You go, where'd you hear that? Oh, I heard it on the internet. Then it's automatically like, close it. You're a conspiracy theorist. You don't know what you're talking about. And this is what they've done. So what it's going to take is more people that the Most High, because the Most High doesn't just talk to people that know him. He talked to many kings that were in demonic worship and changed their spirits. And I think that it's only going to be by the Most High that wakes up some of these people where they confess, where I think it might not happen until they are at the end of their time, where they will do a tell-all thing and they'll talk about all the things that this industry actually is, a music industry. Because I think even if you saw like what happened with the Travis Scott thing that was down there in Houston, right? It's a ritual. It's like it's a literal ritual. And so I think for a lot of our people, it's not even the hesitancy. I think it's also the fact that they have given themselves over to it. Like they have given themselves fully over to that because they love the spirit of lust. They love the alcoholism. They love the smoking of weed. We've all been there, right? Like we've all been there. And so it's like, I know what it's like to be fully given up. But when the spirit of the Most High, like when somebody listens to this video and hears you talking or hears me talking or goes to Masa's, something will happen. There'll be a seed that gets dropped and they will wake up one day and be like, none of this makes sense anymore. But what we need to stop doing is we need to get out of this idol worship. This is the best way that I can answer your question. Our people from the very beginning of time are obsessed with idol worship. And until you stop worshiping these celebrities and the athletes because they say a thing that you talked about with your friend, like, oh, see, I'll give you a case point example. Oh, look at Kendrick Lamar. He knows that he's a Hebrew Israelite. Well, okay, what is he doing that's righteous? What is he doing that's leading his people to the Most High? But our people are so desperate to find somebody that's like higher than them in their mindset to cling on to. And then it's like, but those people are leading you astray. That's why even for me and what I do, I simply say, look, many people are going to hate me for when I talk about these things, but that doesn't have anything to do with me. All I'm supposed to be doing is giving a message, and whatever I have to deal with as because I'm giving that message is just what it is. Because in my spirit, when you've been given a platform, the Most High is now saying you have a responsibility. You can do two things. You can be like the pimping pastors and use them to take advantage of them, or you'll make more money. You'll be even more of a celebrity. Or you can take a step back, tell people the truth, because what I say is kind of the opposite. Like, well, if people get out of this, then you won't have a job. Oh, well, that is what it is. Or you can begin to lead your people. And like Isaiah said, if you love me, feed my sheep. That is what we need more people to do. We need people to stop being afraid of losing something. And many of our people are afraid to lose things. And because of this, this is how they've also binded us spiritually.
Right. And I was actually kind of re-looking at that movie, Ali.
Yeah.
And, that was an example of when you decide that you're not going to do something that the system wants you to do. They literally try to destroy your life because of it. And, that's one of the things that I think many people are fearful of when we talk about this awakening is because I know for myself, I'm very much hated by this system. And I've actually witnessed certain things that they have done subtly to tell me that. Or to, when I was in Embo, there was a brother who even said, that's why when I thought I got COVID, I said, I wonder if this is what he was talking about, because he said I would be poisoned, and, one of the things that I noticed from the land, this is why I want to go back so bad, is the energy difference. I felt when I was there, I mean, this one sister that was with us, she looked at me and she just kind of snapped back, like, your eyes, they're so bright. Like like I literally had started to change. And then I remember when I came back, there's another brother that with Masa, and he talks sometimes. He said, you look different. You look different. You have something, when we went through the cleansing and we were doing the stuff with Papa Kitoko, while we were there, and it was like I was actually noticing it. And the thing that got my attention though is like, wait a minute, but there's all these people here on the continent. How come they can't see what I'm talking about? Because I was sitting down with a brother and his poor, I mean, he had enough English to understand some of the things I was saying. And he was just like blown away, like with the stuff we were talking about. He was just like, wow, wow.
Right.
But then there was the other person that was listening, and it was just like, I'm walking this way, you know.
Right.
And
Right.
it's amazing to me how, you know, there was a older lady, and it was amazing because a lot of people need to learn, and this is why I'm glad that you're doing what you're doing and others. At first, I had some of the reserve of the continent. Oh man, you know, what's going to happen to me? Can I get myself into trouble? You know, and there was a couple of moments that when we were doing our trip that it got a little bit, you know, concerning. But then the Most High, you know, I forgot I had a vision. The Most High had lions around me. It was like, as soon as I got off the plane, he said, I had this vision like there were going to be lions. And it was like every time I saw that something could go a sour, it rectified itself.
Right.
And so, you know, I think our people, you know, when I was talking to this one lady and her daughter, and she could speak Spanish because I spoke Spanish, and because my Portuguese was not that great. I mean, I was learning, and for some reason, she's like, I understand what you're saying. Congo is Deus, because I mean, you know, and they speak Portuguese as Deus. She said, Congo is Deus? Yeah.
Yeah.
She was like, you know, for some reason, I knew that. And see, in the part where Masa took us and Beulah, they mostly speak Kikongo. They didn't speak a lot of Portuguese. And that's why he even said, if you need me, my mom has to translate because I don't understand it enough. And it was funny because, you know, and it, you know, when I interacted with Pastor Mello, and it began to really resonate. Our people, even he says, like when he were talking to the taxi driver, he's like, I take the opportunity to educate our people. And I just realized it's the knowledge. They have the spirit. They know certain spiritual things. It's the knowledge. That's the problem.
We need the knowledge. The people from the West need to come and bring the knowledge transfer. It's like the technology transfer. They have the spirit here on the ground, but they've been indoctrinated in a different way. We from the West have sat amongst and worked amongst all of these people. And so we have an idea about how to read these contracts and know how, if you're, you know, you're giving your land away for, you know, for a little bit of water, right? Like selling your farm for some seeds. So now what our job in the diaspora is, you have to bring the knowledge from the diaspora and merge it now with the spiritual power of the people. And that is how we will become. But the problem is that our people have to understand. You must overstand this, not even understand. You must overstand this. You must come to work. You must come to build. It is not a vacation. It is not early retirement. This is a full-time job being on the continent because of what they have done to keep this place underdeveloped. That doesn't mean that there's not hotels, that there's Hiltons here in Botswana and Hyatts and, you know, malls, and there's all these other things, but that doesn't represent the entire country the same way that it is Angola, the same way it is all over the place. And so many of our people, what I think is going to be the hardest thing is, are you, the question that I guess I would pose to even the kings and queens that watch this video, the question that you have to ask yourself is, what are you willing to give up? What are you willing to do away with comfort-wise? Because there is a mindset of the devil, you know, right? Some of us are now just like, I'm just comfortable with the devil I know. I know that I don't like my job, but it's consistent. I never have to worry about them paying me. You know, it allows me to buy this, and this for my family, right? These are all of these comfortable trappings. And that is a very, very big thing. That's why I say it's the continent. For many are called, but few are chosen, because it's not going to be for everyone. It's a very harsh reality. It's not to be negative. It's so that we really introduce some reality to our people, that many of our people will be exactly like they were when they were leaving Egypt. We're halfway through the wilderness, and like, yo, we kind of miss Egypt. You know, we're eating good fish in Egypt. you know, we were able to have this, we were able to do this. Yo, let's just turn back and go back this way. And some of our people did do that, right? And so this is going to be the same thing. And I think that here on the continent, it's not, our people are very spiritual, especially here in Botswana. Oh man, very spiritual. When you sit there and I'm telling you, reading things with my wife, and she's sitting there going, yeah, you know, because in Ndebele, this is what their culture is, and we would do this, and here are these things that, you know, practices of whether it be circumcision or rituals for this or rituals for that. They're like, and I'm just taking you through and just reading you these things. She's like, oh, this is, so then it became easier for them to understand, because they're not going to understand if you say, here's Deuteronomy 28, you know, here's this, here's that. It doesn't really pertain to them. But once you start to get into the rituals of things, then they're sitting there going, oh, we can connect with this. This is something that we've always known. But because religion, especially Christianity, what they did is they offered them jobs, right? They burned everything down around them and then said, come and follow this doctrine, and this doctrine will give you jobs. Our people are controlled because we're always hungry. We're all hungry all over the world. We have the same mindset. We're always hungry. Rather, we're hungry for food, hungry for money, hungry for attention. We're hungry. And this is what the greatest weapon that the Kadi and Pemba is using against us. And so we must take some discipline to read. Because there's been days here, brother, where I've been like, what did I get myself into? Like, yo, I could just be back in the West. I could have been doing this. I could just do this. But you're like, but that's not what the Most High told you to ask you to do. That wasn't part of your mission. So there's nothing wrong with thinking about that. Just don't become a victim to it. So when you come and you want to come, understand that you have to come and do work. This is not going to be kick your feet up. You have to rebuild the kingdom, rebuilding the kingdom, not coming into the kingdom. And a lot of our people want a turnkey house. This is not a turnkey house. Like, this is not that. And if you want a turnkey, you might as well just stay in the West, and we'll do the same thing that the Most High did with Gideon when he said, look, this is too many people. We need 29,700 of them, send them back. Let them go back to their tents and let them chill. But for the dogs that don't have a problem getting their hands dirty, and for the dogs that don't have a problem being uncomfortable, those are the ones that you'll take into battle. And that's the same thing for our people. Many will come, but there'll be a time where people like us that are in this truth will stand up and go, look, we understand that it's not bad. We understand that it's a little bit difficult. If y'all want to get on the next flight tomorrow morning, go. Many of our people will go. But the ones that will stay, those will be the one that Tatanzambi will literally put his power on. And we will do things like that, like literally like this, because right now we're still sifting through. We're still separating the wheat from the tares.
True. And, now that you mentioned that, it's that's kind of like the problem I'm dealing with myself. People, they hear you. And I remember I was brought, when I was there, that's why it kind of felt good though, to come out of my comfort zone. Yeah. And to be able to, okay, I'm sleeping on a cot. I'm not sleeping on a bed, I'm taking a bath with a bucket now. I'm not using running water. It was kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm going to the bathroom in a hole, and see, fortunately, I know I wasn't scouts when I was younger, but I remember the Caribbean had some similarities because, they didn't even, my parents came from, didn't even have the first car to the 1950s. Wow, so my dad kind of like, we had to, I said, this is like going to my grandmother's house when the water runs out of the cistern, so because they don't have rivers in the USVI. So, it was kind of like, I kind of had to transition my mind. And see, that's the issue, I think, with many of our people is it's going to be a mind transfer. Like, you won't believe, like, I had to get out of the habit. I had to go to the bathroom. Hey, it's Africa. Just go over there,
Yeah, just literally just go right there. Go right there.
And it was like, and that to me was the thing that made me say, okay, this is gonna be and it was great, a learning experience, because you see people. I mean, we went to one of the poorest areas of Angola, I mean, of Luanda, and you can just sense that this man that was working there, he was caring for the people and what he was doing. And there were so many, we had a chance. The one thing that was a blessing was when I had to bring food for the congregation. And I didn't know it was going to be a congregation, really. I thought I was just bringing food for and I came, I was like, man, do I have enough food? It kind of felt like, when the Messiah said, bring the 2 loaves. But when it was almost like the miracle happened again, because it was like everybody was fed from this little bit of food that was brought. And I was like, wow, the Most High really does, like Master said, he exists among the poor. And you're right, because it is going to be work. And because when I saw what I saw, even when I saw the Tokwis church, I was like, these people are doing some great things. I'm not saying that they're not, but the community around them is in shambles. So what are they telling these politicians? What are they talking about? Because I see these nice, even the Kimbangwis church is a nice church. And I saw there were a lot of Christian churches, but there was a few that were like really nice looking churches, but the environment is
around it.
You see all the kids that were eating out of the garbage, and it was, I think the craziest thing that I saw was all the people exercising at night. It was like they came out of the work running, and I said, "Wow, I've never, in our country,
during the day, it's too hot to be running during the day.
Ain't
no time to be running around during the day." But what you were saying too, just not to cut you off, to also keep in mind, that is what you were just saying about like, everywhere you go doesn't mean that there's going to be a hotel for you to be staying in. Right. Sometimes that means that you will be on a cot. That means that there might not be air conditioning, right? You might go into a guest house where there isn't a hot water heater. These are some of those little things that kind of throw you off of your comforts from home. Because when you're at home, you just turn on the hot water and that's it, right? Like you just hop in your bed. And so these are those little comforts that really get to a person, after a while, so I definitely agree with you.
Well, and see, I think that the way we've been conditioned, especially now with people that's trying to come back, is the Most High is just going to just give it to me.
Yeah.
They have the scripture said, they go to Matthew, and it's where it says you don't have to worry about tomorrow. Well, yes, you don't have to really worry about tomorrow. The Most High will provide, but not the way that you have been conditioned to think.
Right. You will eat, but you won't be eating from what is it? What do they have? What is it at the West? Like from like the delivery. What's the apps that they have? It's
the DoorDash.
Yeah, you'll be eating, but you won't be getting it from DoorDash. Right? Your Pizza Hut will not be delivering you a pizza. You'll eat something, you'll sleep, but it might not be the way that a great example is I think it was in February last year of this year. I was at one of the Airbnbs at the time before I got my place. And I'm sitting there and it was like so hot, gets so hot here in Botswana, like, 100 degrees, 101, and that's like standard. Right. And so you just wake up and you're just sweating. And then there's an air con, but then like, as the night was coming, that was it. All the electricity had just gone off. There'd been like rain, and then there's no electricity. And I remember just sitting there, just drenched in sweat. I like lay on the floor. I just can't. And this was like 3 days. And I'm like, what is going on? Are they fixing the electricity or what's happening? And I'm like, what are you guys doing? But then it does something where it like trains you it's like the Most High when he's talking about bringing you through that furnace, refining you. It's like preparing you to get away from all of these comforts, because then you appreciate the comforts, right? Like, it's not like I don't miss sometimes my bed that I had in the West. I have a nice bed here now, but I say that to say that it's like, when you come, it's not like everyone that's come, it's not like you're going to land right into a village. If you went into South Africa, into Johannesburg, you'd be like, this is better than most of some of these cities that you see in the West, right? Like, so it just depends on where you go. But most of what they have done on the continent, they have kept our people so down. And so because of that, the electricity and the this, but see, there's this weird thing that where a lot of people then also say, that's also could be a blessing for the Most High, because a lot of the things that the West and the Europe is trying to do with a lot of the technology and this and the third, they're not going to be able to do that here on the continent. That's like a 20 to 25-year plan, because there's not enough electricity poles. They don't have the technology to go deep into these villages. So there is kind of this opportunity as well, where I'm not saying that I want them to not be developed, because of course that's a goal, but it's like you have to look at the bright side of everything when you're here. Otherwise, it'll just drive you mad. But it's like there's certain things from the West, you do have a different level of freedom, and the aspect of anything that you think of for a job is a job that they need here on the continent, right? Anything. If you say, oh, I want an internet cafe, you can do an internet cafe. Oh, I want to do a coffee shop or a tea shop, you can do that. In the West, you can't do those things. Every place has internet. Every place has coffee and tea. So that is one of the beauties, that if you come with an entrepreneurial type of mindset, this is the place for you to be anywhere on the continent, right? But this is one of those things that even for me, I was like, oh, I got to write these things down, because I'll never accomplish anything. There's too many ideas that I can do here, but our people are going to really have to, like, that's what I think is great what you did. You come over for a little bit, see, you get a little vacation thing, get a little reality, then go back, let it all sit, and then say, okay, do I want to go back to that place, or do I want to go to another place? Is the continent really good? Because I know a lot of people that have like, not saying that you're like this, but just a lot of people that are like, they go to, they're in the West and they're like, yeah, Africa is the promised land and this, and then they go to Africa, they're there for like 5 months, and then they come back to the US and it's like, well, really, we can just go anywhere in the world, like anywhere is for us. And it's like, okay, just say that it was too difficult, like the continent chewed you up and spit you out. Just say that, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is like, just be very realistic, because that's what you need to have when you're here.
Right. Well, and I know you're a busy man, you got things to do. I really appreciate you being here. With just some closing things to really help our people. For example, like, I know when I came back, it's funny how the system is almost like the system knew I was here, and now my life has become a struggle. And I'm noticing that. I even try to get some work going, and it's like I'm hitting roadblocks. And I remember Manzambi Zola, our brother, they were talking about the gentleman that came in and was talking about certain things that were happening with the Jesuits and all the stuff that they were doing for people with light. And I said, this is starting to make sense, that it's like, because I noticed that my strongest demonic attacks really started to pick up when I got back. Because it's like, over there, the vibration, like you say, it's a little bit different. It's just that the people don't understand that this is Mount, they still think of Israel being, and all that way up there. But when I got here, it was like there in Africa, I was being charged.
Right.
When I stepped back here in America, it felt like I was being drained. So like there's an obvious energy variation.
Yes.
That's, I think, to me, that's where people have been trained not to see it.
Yes.
That there's an energy when you don't go somewhere where you're just like, wow, I feel. And see, what was funny was my aunt, well, my mother, she's like my godmother. Her friend went to Africa. Oh, it was the most spiritual thing I've ever experienced. Well, why is that?
Right.
Why is that? And see that when I got there, I was like, now I understand why everything is so connected. But at the same time, it was like, I think Brother Massa says all the time, why do we give away what is ours to them? Why do you, like, one of the things I saw, the colonial, and that's why I did that video with the King of Embo, when he said colonialism or neo-colonialism never ended.
Right.
People have been deceived. It's just been terraformed into something that you can't see.
Yeah.
And when I was in Angola, I could see the Portuguese are still benefiting from that country. Very much so. And they still have a lot of interaction. And then, of course, the Chinese, I saw all that what the Chinese were doing, and I was like,
Chinese cities. And
why is it that our people, and I saw, you know, because this is what frustrated me. I saw all of these smart people that were Bantus around me, as other, you know, but because of the wars that they had, there was no unity. There was a lot of this, and I think, you know, I said, they must have done these wars on purpose to me.
Oh, they absolutely. Yeah, they absolutely.
Yeah, because I mean, they know that if the people in Angola would start to unite and become a lot more aware, it would basically change the environment.
It changes everything.
Yeah, and so I think that one of the things that people need to understand is, you know, and I love what Masa said, it's not going to just happen overnight. It is a work in progress. At the same time, though, the Most High will do things miraculously that will begin to make that shift. Because Masa did say, you know, it's going to be like one day you're going to be here, next day, boom, we're up here, and they're looking at like, what how
I get up here?
How did and so I think that especially myself, because I mean, I'm still in the struggle myself. It's a war. That I can tell it's the war is intensifying. I can tell, like, I'm here and I'm seeing just the stuff that they're doing. It's like, man, people just need to wake up, because it's only becoming more obvious that something, especially now that they're uniting the religions and they're doing there's a guy in Australia, he come out flat out said, this is the one new world order. You know, and it's like, people just like, oh, you know,
it's right in your face, because you're still entertained, right? As long as you're entertained, our people love bread and circus. Like in the West, as long as you have your bread and circus, you have your NFL, your NBA, your NHL, your MLB, you have your thing.
Well, see, that's why I felt it was so important for them to get that stuff restarted. Because when everything was shut down, they saw that the knowledge was starting to increase among our people.
And
they were like,
oh, curious. We had nothing to do. I'm asking questions, you know, and to just add to your point, very powerful point that you were making, you know, they can't ever afford for you to not become unified, because in your unification, that's where your power is. Because we are the opposite of what they are, where they're like, no, it's just one of us and we're the top, and we do that. We do the opposite. It's a community. And so what they do is they try to say fragmented. You know, if you're using the Malcolm X, the house Negro versus the field Negro, if you use that very easy way to understand something, that is exactly what they're still doing. They're just doing it in a different way. They do it socially and economically now. Right? They don't have to whip you. They now do it in a financial thing, because when you're worried about your finances, you can't ever take that extra step forward. You always have to kind of be obedient, because I can't afford not to feed my family, especially if you're married and you have children. It's a difference of, oh, I by myself, I cannot eat, but what of my wife or one of my kids? So I think that that's something in Angola. And they used to bring up people from South Africa. They were bringing up people in South Africa to fight in the wars in Angola, right? They were always doing, this is what they've, man, once our people know and understand how they have maneuvered us and what they have done and how they have done it. But, you know, until our people in the West get out of this desire to wear jerseys all day and care about football scores and all these other things, it's going to be exactly what the Most High said it was going to be. Not because that's what we want, but it's because you can be in a giant room telling everybody the truth and no one wants to hear it. They're all just in their little thing. They're in their own little world. But what is the thing that Mark Zuckerberg is creating the metaverse or whatever.
Metaverse,
That's what we're in that already, you know.
Yeah.
So it's only for us. And for the energy, I would say this to you as well. You're more of a target now because your light is brighter because you were there. Because when you were there, you're getting energy. And as you're there, as you're on the continent, your energy gets so big, right? Well, as Mawindu, the people of the sun, that's just because. So then when you land back, the darkness recognizes this massive light. So it's easier to just attack this massive light because they see how charged it is. That's what it is. That's how the spirits work.
Hallelujah. Well, brother, I really do appreciate your time talking. You know, this has been a blessing for me. I needed this, actually. I really did need this. I mean, you know, one of the things that a lot of people don't understand in our awakening is those of us who are kind of doing a lot of the things in our awakening, we also need each other.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And so
we don't always have all the answers.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, I always say seek the Most High. Always say that, because, you know, even with all of us who have knowledge and wisdom and understanding, you know, there are those of us that don't see that the Most High's knowledge is still vast. His wisdom, his understanding is so much more. And he can give you the steps.
Yes.
If you just allow him to work. And, you know, even myself, I find myself getting, oh, Trey, you need to redirect yourself. You need to focus more on this. And, you know, I think that this is one of the things that has been the motivation for me to continue to move forward, is because I know at some point, I mean, so many people are talking about it now, about the coming shift. And people realize what that really means is,
right.
Like, that's why I did my video about the tares in the wheat. He's not talking about vegetables. Okay, he's not talking about actual weeds. He's not talking about actual wheat. He's talking about people.
Yes.
Okay, and that means, see, and I don't know why even in Christianity they don't make this transition to understand. He's talking about people.
Yes.
Which means that people are going to die.
Yes.
People are going to die. And it's going to be a lot more than you think. And see, that's where, you know, our people just don't seem, they have that tunnel vision. Oh yeah, God and Jesus and the Lord and all that. And it's like,
the rapture will take me out before I go through anything bad. Yes, absolutely.
And see, the problem that they don't understand is, but you're in Mystery Babylon.
Right.
You're in Mystery Babylon. You just weren't conditioned to see it.
To see it. But it's been right there in front of you. If your entire life, if you just flip over the dollar bill, they just have all the symbolisms right there on the very childish level, that you can just literally take the dollar bill and just go through and like, wait a second, look at this symbol. And like you're saying, our people need to understand, we don't conceptualize. I think even some of us in our truth, we don't even really fully conceptualize how bad or how detrimental that which the Most High is going to bring, because we still have cognitive dissonance. We still have a little bit of separation. That is separating the wheat from the tares. That is going to be a major separation, like you were saying, and there's going to be much more recompense than I think a lot of us are even willing to admit, because a lot of that is even going to be people that we even know, people that we've interacted with, you know, are going to fall under that same torment, I guess, if you will.
Hallelujah. All right, brother. Well, I really appreciate your time. If you want to go ahead and pray us out, I appreciate it.
Yes, please. Kembo natatanzambi yamazulu kimfumo kyako gisa, mighty name of Isaiah Congo. Tatanzambi, we praise you, we thank you, we worship and exalt you as the Elimo of all things, for we are just lucky to be at the bottom of your feet. We ask that you would just guide us. We ask that you would guide all those that have ears to hear and eyes to see, that you would open up their spirits and pour over them the truth of who you are. We ask that you would just give us continual guidance. We ask that anything that we're struggling with, the freedoms that we are used to, that we would be willing to submit to you, that knowing that you will guide our steps, that we know that having faith without works that is dead, and that we will die if we do not follow in the works that you have told us to do. You've given us great gifts, Tatanzambi. And so we ask that you would just pour yourself over, that our gifts would be manifested into the physical realm, that we would be able to live and be able to reap all of those rewards to help our people and the children of Isolele. We praise you and we thank you in all things. Ingeta.
Ingeta. All right, brother. I know you got some work to do. You're very busy. I really do appreciate this. Soon I hope to have it uploaded. Let me just stop